Okay, so let's talk about why we skip breakfast. It's one of the hallmark features of the New Life weight loss program. And it's really, there's a lot of science behind why we do that. And it has to do with something called intermittent fasting. You may or may not be familiar with that. And it's related to a hormone called insulin. So that's what we're going to chat about tonight, just briefly, for about maybe 10 minutes or so, to have a better understanding of why we do that as part of the program. So, insulin is a hormone, as I mentioned, but it's actually a fat storage hormone. And so, when your insulin is high, your body is in fat storage mode. And when your insulin is low, your body is in fat burning mode. So one thing I want you to remember out of anything we talk about today is the headline of this slide. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. So when we have to think about situations when insulin is going to be high so that we can avoid them, so that we're not in this fat storage mode. So every time you eat, especially when you eat carbohydrates, and especially when you eat simple carbohydrates, and simple carbohydrates are things that are really processed and easily digestible. So, of course, like candies and cakes and cookies and things like that are all breads, pastas, all simple carbs. And when you eat those, it's going to, your pancreas is going to release this hormone called insulin. Insulin's job is to push the sugar from the food that you're eating into your cells so that you can use it now for metabolic activity or for later. So the part that, a lot of us didn't know is that, as I mentioned before, when insulin is high, your body literally cannot burn any of the stored fat. So if we're trying to lose weight and we have high insulin, we're not going to be able to do that. So our fat burning switch is off in that state. When insulin then goes low, however, that flips the switch to the on mode. And so now we're in this fat burning mode. Most of us who are adults eat in the kind of the standard American fashion called the Standard American Diet. And if you look at the acronym SAD, Standard American Diet, most of the people in the Standard American Diet eat 5 to 6 times a day. So you're stuck in this storage mode for the entire day, 16 or more hours. That's the trap that we're trying to break with the intermittent fasting. So there's 2 states. Your body is always in one of these 2 states. You're either in a fed state or a fasted state. So in the fed state, this is within a few hours of eating. So I just ate dinner right before this video, and so now I'm in a fed state. My insulin is going up. I don't have a continuous glucose monitor on, so I don't know for sure, but I guarantee that it's not spiking because of the foods that I ate. So, but what my body is doing now is the insulin's going up a little bit. It's starting to use the foods, break down the foods. It's taking the broken down foods that you digested and absorbed and storing the glucose from those foods as glycogen. And glycogen gets stored in your muscle, and then any extra gets packed away as fat. So right now my fat burning switch is off. The other state that you could be in is the fasted state. So this happens many hours after you last ate. So your insulin has come back down, and now another hormone called glucagon is going up. And the glucagon is pulling energy out of storage. So first it's pulling the glycogen from your muscles, and then it's going to start to burn body fat. So now the burn switch is on. And as I mentioned, glucagon is another hormone. It does the opposite of insulin. So it's kind of the antagonist of insulin. It's a partner there. And so glucagon being up is good because that is the signal for fat burning. It's the hormone for fat burning. And so this is what happens when you're in the fasted state. So the average American, though, is in the fed mode, not the fasted state, in the fed state, almost 16 hours a day, and this is why fat loss sometimes feels impossible. And so we're trying to flip that ratio. So this metabolic switch that I mentioned, let's look at a timeline for this metabolic switch. So for hour 0, this is when you just ingested your last food. So you are trying to break down that food, digest it, absorb it. That creates glucose, increased glucose in your system. Your pancreas says, oh, we need to make more insulin. So insulin goes up so that you can use what you just ate. So that's for the first about 4 hours. Hours 4 through 12 now, we are burning glycogen. So your glycogen in your stored in your liver, and I said muscles too, it's in your muscles and your liver. It gets tapped. So now your body's saying, okay, we need more glucose. It's in storage in the glycogen. We need to pull that out. So the insulin's falling, glucagon is rising. And I know it's probably a little confusing when I was first learning about this back in school. Glucagon and glycogen, they sound similar and they're working together, but they're not the same. So glycogen is running low now in your liver and your muscles, and so there's no energy to be used. Remember, you're still not eating, and your glycogen is running out. Your stored energy is running out, the glycogen. So the metabolic switch now needs to flip, and so your body starts breaking down your body fat. So now after hour 12 of fasting, this is when you can start to break down fat at a significant level. So hours 12 to 16 now, you're producing ketones, and you've probably heard of the ketogenic diet. This is when you are eating either fasting or eating mostly fats so that your body makes these ketones, which are fatty acids, and this creates a clean, steady fuel that you use to fuel your brain. If you go past 16 hours, your something called autophagy ramps up. Now, it's not that you don't do autophagy during the other hours, but it really goes into high gear. And autophagy is when you recycle damaged parts. It's kind of like the dishwasher inside each cell. So it's really important to get autophagy, and that's why people who do more extended fasting, they do it to get into this accelerated autophagy state. So this is why New Life Weight Loss Program uses the 16-hour to 8-hour fast. So 16 hours without food and 8 hours of an eating window. So you skip breakfast, you break your fast at noon with lunch, and then you finish eating by 8 o'clock. So you have an 8-hour window between noon and 8, and you can shift the window. You know, if it's better for your lifestyle to eat at 11 to 7 or 10 to 6, you can certainly do that, but we want to get that 16 hours if possible without eating. So this one change gives your body a real fat burning window every single day. And I will say that some people, if you're listening to the recording, you may be a little nervous about not eating breakfast. And I was one of those people. So I used to eat breakfast every day. It was kind of my favorite meal of the day. And I ate, especially growing up, cereal with milk. And in college, I know I ate literally Pop-Tarts every day in my dorm room. And so I was I got to eat breakfast kind of guy. And so when I started learning about fasting, I'm like, gosh, this is going to be really difficult. And it was a little difficult the first couple of days. But what I realized and what I noticed after I started doing it consistently is that when I eat breakfast, I am more hungry by the time lunch comes than if I just don't eat breakfast at all. So I can, have a little bit of hunger in the morning and get through that, and then I'm good. And by lunchtime, I'm like, oh, it's lunchtime. I should eat now. But if I eat breakfast, then like 10 o'clock, I'm like, okay, when's lunch? 11 o'clock, when's lunch? Noon, finally lunch. But because it got me out of that fasted state, and my body's expecting that energy. So I prefer not to deal with all that cravings and hunger that comes with eating breakfast. And, it helps me long term with the, hopefully sometimes I get into this 16 plus hours for the autophagy. So just wanted to give kind of a personal example of that. So moving along with the insulin, I want to give you kind of a simple way to picture this. So imagine your body as a giant warehouse. Insulin is the foreman at the loading dock. So we've got the warehouse, products going in and out. Loading dock is where the foreman is, and the trucks keep arriving. So the trucks are your food: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, etc. Maybe another snack after dinner before bed. So the foreman is shouting all day, store that, pack that, put that in the back. The workers are never stopping loading. Nothing's leaving. It's all going in, packing it in, packing it in. So that's kind of like your body storing all of this energy as fat. Then trucks stop for 16 hours and the foreman goes quiet. So now this is your fasting period. Glucagon takes over. The insulin foreman's out, the glucagon foreman's in, and he says, start shipping the product out of the warehouse. And so this is the fat that's been sitting in storage maybe for years is finally getting unloaded onto the trucks and burned for energy. So that's what fasting does. It quiets the insulin forming and empties the warehouse, the storage of the fat. So there's a couple of studies I'll share with you. It's not this, fasting is not a fad. It's been very well studied. So in 2018 in the journal Cell Metabolism, they looked at pre-diabetic men, and they were eating in a 6-hour window, actually, between 8 and 2. And they did this for 5 weeks. And they were not looking, this was not a weight loss study, so they weren't looking to see if they were losing weight. They didn't really care about that. The goal with this was they were looking at how sensitive was their body to the insulin, and also looking at blood pressure. So it improved their insulin sensitivity, which I'll explain in a second, and it also dropped their blood pressure an amount equal to taking a blood pressure medication. Just by fasting, they were able to drop that blood pressure. So insulin sensitivity is your cell's response to the insulin. So if you're constantly eating 16, 18 hours a day, especially processed foods, high carb foods, your insulin's high all day long. And eventually your cells just get tired of that. They're tired of hearing that foreman just, yell, pack it in. And so they basically start ignoring the cells start ignoring the insulin, and that they become resistant to it. And that then creates more fat storage, creates more inflammation, other metabolic problems when it happens long term. So that's what they found, is that it improved the sensitivity, so the cells were more receptive to the insulin, so you could bring in the glucose and use it for energy immediately instead of storing it for fat. So the second study showed that a 16 to 8 hour fast, so 16-hour fasting window, 8-hour eating window, produces about a 3 to 5% body weight loss on average across the trials that they looked at in this study. So without counting calories, we're looking at, changing the types of foods that you're eating, the quantities of food that you're eating. Don't count calories in that process, but we do kind of have some limits there. So without any of that, just intermittent fasting, you can see a 3 to 5% body weight loss. But then we add on, of course, our changing what we're eating, because the types of calories, the quality of the calories matters. And then obviously decreasing calories helps as well. And then the third study is a 2019 New England Journal of Medicine review, which showed that intermittent fasting is linked to better blood sugar, which seems obvious now that we've done all this explanation. It's lower inflammation, because blood sugar being high and insulin being high both are inflammatory, so bringing those down. And then better brain health. And one of the things that I notice is if I have a sweet treat that has a lot of processed sugar and processed carbs in particular, it will cause a lot of brain fog, and my brain gets cloudy, and so I tend not to eat any of that stuff. If I'm going to do it, I don't eat it during the day, especially while I'm working, because then I can't be productive. So why do we skip breakfast and not dinner? Now, I'm not saying that you can't skip dinner. In some cases, we do tell people to skip dinner instead of breakfast, but it's just kind of there's some practical reasons why we do that. So number one is dinner is a social event in many situations. Hopefully families are eating together at night. Sometimes you go out and eat with friends or have friends over. So if you're skipping dinner, then it can eliminate that connection time. And so it can become lonely for people and might not be a sustainable choice. So that's one reason. Another reason is that when you wake up, you're naturally in a fasted state. So if you go to bed at 10, you wake up at 6, you're already have not eaten for at least, hopefully, 8 hours if you're not doing midnight snack. And then hopefully you did not eat, for a couple hours before bed too. So maybe you're at 10 hours already, maybe 11 hours of fasting by the time you wake up. So you just need a few more hours to go. So you just extend that fast that your body has already started, and it becomes really the easiest fast that you can do. And then the third one is the breakfast is the most important meal of the day is a myth. That's a marketing slogan created by cereal companies, of course, in the 1940s. And so it's not based on science. Based on all the research that we've looked at with regard to fasting, shows that skipping breakfast is totally safe and effective. In fact, I even exercise fasted. When you exercise fasted, it actually increases your fat burning, because you're already in fat burning, and then you increase the demand, and it just accelerates the fat burning process. So, of course, our program doesn't require exercise. You can do some exercise, and we do want you to move, and there's guidelines in the program for how to do that. Obviously, we're not talking about that in this discussion, but we will in a future, I believe. So, All right, so how do we make this practical? How do we put this into practice? So if you're watching this and you're kind of just getting started, here's what I would recommend that you do this week. So figure out what your window is going to be. So, we typically recommend people go noon to 8. So if you're working, you can do your normal lunch, lunchtime around noon. You get home at 6, you still got a couple of hours to get your dinner in. If that's too aggressive, like I said before, you can alternate it. So if you want to go 11 to 7, 10 to 6, whatever's going to work within your schedule is fine. You can adjust it if you need to. Just keep your eating within an 8-hour window, and you're good. Protect the fast. So in the morning, you can have water, you can have black coffee, you can have plain tea, but no cream, no sugar, no diet sweeteners, because the sweet taste alone can actually increase your insulin, because it's the taste signal that tells your brain, oh, we're getting food, so let's make insulin. So it doesn't necessarily have to be coming from actual sugar with calories. It could come from the diet sweeteners and even the natural sweetener alternatives. Be careful with teas. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't know about this with coffee, but with teas in particular, the tannins. I'm a huge tea drinker. This is unsweet tea. The tannins in the tea, if you drink it while you're fasted, sometimes can create some nausea, and that does happen to me occasionally. So just keep that in mind. Break the fast with protein. So at noon, you're going to get your protein, of course, your 4 to 6 ounces of lean protein, your 4 ounces of a low glycemic fruit, and your 4 ounces of vegetables. Of course, you can have a salad on top of that as well. All of this keeps your insulin low and steady. So I talked about, what I was eating for dinner that made me believe that my insulin is not spiking right now. I had some salmon, I had broccoli, and some sweet potatoes. Now, not all of that is on the weight loss plan. Some of that'll come back, especially after 60 days. You'll be able to eat some of the healthy fats come back in. But that's kind of something that I do on more of a maintenance basis. But none of those things will spike my blood sugar. And then you want to avoid grazing outside of the windows. So eat your 2 clean meals. If you need to have a snack in between, you can, but if you're able to fast between the 2 meals, that's even better, but it's not necessary, it's not required, but just know that every snack is going to restart that insulin clock. But if you're hungry and nauseated, we're not intending you to be hungry. It's not a starvation diet, so eat a clean snack. You could have a salad, you could have a little bit of extra protein. There's some really clean, like beef sticks. Think about like the what are those really terrible ones called? I don't know. You find them Slim Jims. You find them in the gas station. They're awful. Don't eat those. But there's some really healthy, like Chomps is a good brand. There's a lot of good brands out there. It's just clean, organic, grass-fed beef, chicken, turkey. I would recommend the turkey for the lean meat. They come in a little pack. You could just eat those as a snack if you need to. It's a really great way to get extra protein. It helps you to lose weight all by itself. There's some research that shows that too. So certainly won't begrudge you eating more protein. And then it does take a little bit to get used to. So, push through the days. Hopefully by the first week to 10 days, you will probably have a little bit of fatigue because you're not getting that fast hit of simple carbohydrates. And you may have some headaches and you may be a little hangry. This is what some people describe as the keto flu. It does pass. Drink more water, add some electrolytes to it, get a pinch of salt. There's a number of brands out there you can get some electrolyte additives if you need to do that long term, but you could just throw some salt in your water as well. So just a couple of notes on safety, of course. So, obviously you're working with us to change your eating pattern, but if you're on a couple of situations, if you're on insulin or a diabetes medication, this plan has a risk of dropping your blood sugar, or it will drop your blood sugar. So it has a risk of dropping it too low because you're also using insulin or diabetes medication. So we're probably not managing those medications. So you want to make sure that the provider who is in the loop on what you're doing. And if measuring your blood sugar and it's going too low, or you're feeling low blood sugar symptoms, get in contact with their office, call their nurse, tell them you need probably to adjust your medication because your blood sugar is dropping too low because you're working on fixing the problem. Same with blood pressure. We talked about how blood pressure can come down. It's probably not going to be a huge drop, but your medication may need an adjustment. So keep an eye on that too. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding or trying to conceive, you don't want to be on this particular food plan. You're going to need more nutrients because you're feeding for two. If you have a history of disordered eating, doesn't mean you can't do the plan, but you're definitely going to want to probably have some mental health support with that as well, and so we can give you some references for that. Or if you're underweight, which we would not sign you up for this program, or if you have some sort of chronic illness, again, we do a lot of testing and we know your medical history, so there shouldn't be an issue there. We would be aware of it. So again, we're a non-medication program, but some of these individual situations do matter, especially when we're talking about fasting. So we do encourage you to loop your primary care doctor in so that they know what you're doing, and eventually, if you're on medications, you have different conditions, you'll likely, in some cases, be able to reduce or eliminate those medications because of the health changes that you're making. This isn't a diet. Yeah, what you're eating is changing, but we're getting you healthy from the inside out. And the result of that, the side effect of being healthy, is that you can get to a healthy weight, and that's what makes it sustainable. And then the lab piece of it, of course, that's what helps us to figure out what's going on the inside, because if we want to get you healthy from the inside out, we got to know what's going on the inside. And so that's why we do labs with whatever program you're doing with us. You get some labs so we can have a better understanding of what's going on, and that allows us to personalize and customize the plan specific for your needs. So that is the presentation for today. The main takeaway, again, is that insulin is your fat storage hormone. We want to keep it low for longer so that your body can burn the fat that you're carrying and that you're wanting to lose. And so that's why we skip breakfast. Protect that fast. Make sure you get that 16 hours of not eating. And if you need to work up to that, I talked about you can shift the window, but if you need to fast for 12 hours first or 13 and then go to 14 and 15, you can work your way up to that if you need to. Eat those clean proteins, veggies, low glycemic fruits at lunch and dinner. Next week, I'm going to talk, I hinted at it a little bit here in this video, but in the next video, I'm going to talk about why protein is the MVP, the most valuable player or most valuable protein or most valuable part of your plate. So we will talk next time on the video, on the next video, about protein in a whole lot more detail. Okay, so Joanne, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Everything I've been hearing lately, is this the new thing about breakfast should be the biggest meal of the day with tons of protein?
Well,
I've asked people, and because I had not heard that, and I said, "Is this a new fad?" Oh no, it's always been that way. So anyway,
I think maybe they're piggybacking off of the cereal company's promotion. But there's no harm in not eating breakfast, assuming for the general population. There are some conditions potentially that you might need to eat breakfast. But if you're going to eat breakfast, absolutely make it high protein and low carb. So you would kind of create a meal that's similar to the meals that you're eating on the rest of the day that we have for lunch and dinner, is where it's high protein, some vegetables, and a low glycemic fruit. And that would be the way to eat breakfast. What you don't want to do for breakfast, and I'll say you can't never do this, but once you get to your weight loss goal and you're humming and doing well, and then you want to go out to breakfast with your girlfriends or whatever, and you're going to go have a French toast or a muffin. Like, that's fine once you're at your goal, because you're not going to do that every day. But those are the things you want to avoid for breakfast, the high carb stuff, because what that's going to do is going to shoot your insulin up, and then what goes up must come down, so you're going to crash. That's what a lot of times causes the afternoon fatigue for people. So if you eat breakfast, eat a clean breakfast, avoid those high carb things. Good question.
I have one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind.
No, not at all.
The other thing that I've heard for years is eat 3 or 4 or 5 small meals, because you want to eat throughout the day so that your metabolism stays high.
Well, as I mentioned, that's not necessarily the case. So let me see if I can find the slide.
And I'm not challenging you. I'm
No,
just,
no,
I'm
it's a good
just
question. So I think that there is a situation where that is an appropriate food plan for certain people. And that was kind of what I was saying, where there are certain conditions where some people should eat breakfast. Well, there are certain conditions where some people do need to eat throughout the day. So if they have like an actual hypoglycemia type of situation, diagnosis, then definitely that type of person would need to eat throughout the day. But in that case, we would still be eating clean protein and fruits and vegetables and avoiding processed carbs and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why we don't do that here in this program, especially when we're trying to get to a weight loss goal, is because we never get into fat burning mode. So in a maintenance situation, maybe that might be okay. Still have to make sure that you're, not overeating and eating good, clean foods. So like once you hit your weight loss goal, you don't necessarily have to fast every day. In fact, your body likes novelty. So it's actually better long term if you change up your fasts. We keep it simple in the beginning of the program and say skip breakfast. But the research shows that if you change things around and your body doesn't know what's happening, it has to kind of stay more on its toes, so to speak. And it's basically like exercising your muscles. In this case, you're exercising your physiology, keeping it strong and adaptable and flexible. So in that case, like I said, once you get to your weight loss goal, if you're in maintenance, you can certainly, if you want to eat and graze throughout the day, fine. And then, on the next day, maybe you fast breakfast. And then the next day, maybe you skip dinner and so forth. So once you get into that maintenance phase, you can certainly change it up. That's where you really got to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. So, I did this program a long time ago, and, sometimes when I go away on a holiday or vacation, or it's the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, I pay less attention to what I'm eating. I'm eating more of the stuff that I shouldn't, as we typically do. And, I gain a few pounds, and then I go back on this way of eating, and then the weight comes back off. So that kind of, you have that flexibility once you've reached your weight loss goal. So you don't necessarily have to stick to the always fasting breakfast every day once you get to that point. Hopefully that helps
Gotcha. Okay.
answer your question. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So I know you haven't quite started the plan yet, but once you meet with Trisha, you're going to love that appointment. She's got lots of insights into all the different labs and things that you've had drawn, and she'll give you some recommendations specific to you based on what the labs are, and we'll get you going, and you're going to start to feel better and see some clothes loosening up, and we're excited to be on the journey with you.
Oh, great. I can't wait.
All right. Well, let us know if you have any questions. Jump into that Facebook group. Yeah, I think that's the best part of the program, honestly, because everybody in there is on the program currently. And so it's just a great way to share tips and tricks that you have found. Somebody posted that they were struggling recently, and they created some sort of like healthy pizza recipe that fit all the components of the food plan. So it's great to be able to share, and also ask questions when you're struggling or you have an issue, or you just you're in the grocery store and you're wondering about a food. You could post it up there, and of course post the ingredients so that we can look at it. And we obviously probably won't be able to get back to you right away while you're in the grocery store, but any questions you have that are, just kind of generic that other people might have as well, feel free to post them in the group, and everybody kind of chimes in. It's a really great community.
All right, great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for jumping on tonight, and hopefully I'll see you sometime soon in the office.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.